Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar with Acquisio and Yellow, Advertising to the Post-COVID Local Consumer. My name is Lizzie, and I am a Senior Account Manager for Locology, and I will be your host for today's event. A few housekeeping items before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be circulated to all attendees with the presentation within 24 hours of the broadcast. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end. And if your question is not answered during that, we will follow up post-webinar. You can, however, ask questions at any time during the broadcast by using the question window in your control panel. Our speakers today include Richard Couture, CTO and Co-Founder of Acquisio, and he is also joined by Greg Nicolle, National Capability and Performance Manager at Yellow. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Richard and Greg to kick things off.
Thanks, Lizzie. So yeah, hi everyone. Look, I'm Greg Nicolle from Yellow Pages all the way over in Australia. I've been with Yellow for 20 years. So that's right back in the days when the only advertising out there was the printed Yellow Pages. I don't know what advertisers say in the US, but back in Australia, they refer to those as the good old days. Yellow has been around obviously for a long time, about 140 years, obviously starting off with the printed directory, like I said. But today, we're the largest online directory in Australia, and we're also a full-service digital agency. So working across websites, SEO, digital display, social, and of course, SEM, where we partner with the best in the business, Acquisio. Personally, I'm married, got 3 teenage kids, and like everyone else at the moment, I'm in lockdown. So that means lots of Monopoly, lots of Trivial Pursuit. We're in a stalemate at the moment. We've got 3-3, so it's getting a little bit serious. And I'm proud to say, according to CNN, as of a few days ago, I actually live in the safest place in the world. So little old Adelaide in South Australia. Now, I'm not sure why that is, but it's probably because not many people know where little old Adelaide is and not many people come here. So, but either way, yeah, glad to be living in the safest place in the world at the moment.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for attending the webinar today. I'm usually the guy behind the scene at Acquisio, but in the current COVID situation, where pretty much all of us are now behind the scene, I accepted the invitation from marketing to step right up front and discuss with you. So for those of you that don't know Acquisio provides a cross-channel advertising platform, and we also have a programmatic trading desk specialized for local businesses. We've been working with Yellow for more than 7 years. They have a great team. We love really working with them. We're very happy to be partnered with them. We serve clients mostly in North America. We have a good base in Australia, New Zealand, and in Europe, the part of Europe that we can serve in English. Our main office is in Montreal, Quebec. In Quebec, we speak French, as you can see from my accent. And we also have offices in the States, sales offices in the UK. So going back to me, I'm a French Canadian. That sounds like a hockey player when I speak English. I'm also a big fan of the sport. So playing with the whole man like me in garage leagues, trying to keep up with younger players, and it's not always easy. So, but I've been told by my colleague, my wife, and kids that I'm also an extreme hummer. So I'm humming when I get really deeply concentrated. So I know it's annoying when they ask me to stop. So I'll try to not hum during the presentation today. I also have a best secret gin and tonic recipe that could be revealed with a small hint. It's a drop of grapefruit. So I hope you can keep the secret and I hope you can enjoy. So, okay, enough on me. Let's look at the agenda for today's presentation. So today's webinar is focused around 3 main objectives that we believe will help us try to predict and be prepared to how customer behaviors are changing beyond the immediate. We will share some observation made on local consumer behaviors. We will also explore what is to be expected from these local consumer post-COVID. And finally, we will present 5 advertising tips for local advertisers on how to observe, learn, and adapt. And now I will let Greg covers the 101 on local marketing. Greg?
Greg, I think you may be muted if you want to start over on this slide.
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, I was actually just saying, if anybody does catch Richard humming during the presentation, just put it up there in the in the chat. We probably should have had a prize for the first person to catch him humming. Now, first, I think when we're looking at today's agenda, it's good to have a look at what local marketing is and just set the scene there about who we're talking about. So when we think local marketing or local business, we're thinking businesses who have local clientele. So maybe serving customers within a 10 to 50 mile radius of their location and appealing to the type of consumers that are typing things like near me or typing their local county or their local state into Google. They have a real community focus. So supporting their local sports club, employing local people, getting involved in that local community and looking after their local community members. Generally, they have a smaller cash flow. Now, that's not always the case, but quite often local businesses are family businesses and their priority is great service and a real community fit and a real community feel, not necessarily just making big profits. They generally have brick and mortar premises. So they'll most likely have an online presence, so like a website or do some online marketing. However, they may not have e-commerce, and the preference generally would be to have consumers actually come down to their store and interact with the business locally. And repeat business and word of mouth are really, really important for these types of businesses. And in local communities, if you do a great job or if you do a poor job, obviously word travels really fast. So doing a great job and getting that repeat business is critical for these types of businesses. So look, that's local marketing. Now I'd like to zoom out a little bit and have a look at how COVID-19 is having an effect on these local businesses and SMBs. And these are some big numbers, okay? But if we have a look, it's estimated there's been 26 billion in wage losses from local businesses closing in the US so far. So that's a big number. On its worst day since the pandemic begun, local restaurants saw a 68% decrease in year-on-year revenue. In Australia, actually, all restaurants are currently closed for dine-in meals. So I'm sure it's a similar situation here and likely all over the world. And on the worst day for local travel and tourism, businesses saw a 66% decrease in year-on-year revenue. So that's the big picture, but bringing it back to local business for a moment, this is where businesses really need to understand the local effects of COVID-19 in their area and have a look at themselves internally and evaluate what parts of their business are affected by COVID-19. And on the flip side, which parts of their business will excel. So we've framed up what a local business looks like and looked at the financial impact on COVID-19 and how it's having an effect on small business. Now, Richard will take us through the different phases of the consumer behaviour during COVID-19.
So we will frame the rest of the talk according to the following consumer behavior timeline. So starting with the initial shock that happened in mid-March, where we observed some record high e-commerce sales, specifically around essential goods. So we'll follow by the lockdown reality, where we observe week-over-week decline in the online sales and drop in demand and employee hours. We will cover the progressive reemergence that most of us are currently slowly going through. And these phases will lead us to what we now call the new normal. And I will let Greg cover the 5 steps that will also explain.
Great, thanks, Richard. So yeah, the 5 steps to success. This is probably why we're all here today. So this is understanding the steps that businesses can take as they move through those different phases. And really, step 1 is about understanding your business and how people are looking for you. So that's changing a lot and it's changing quickly. So people are doing more local searches. They're looking for delivery. They're looking for contactless pickup. They may even be looking for different products and searching for different types of services to what they would traditionally say pre-COVID-19 be searching for. So it's important to understand that, understand what's happening in that market and what's happening within your business. Having a strong digital presence is really important. And you may hear me refer to this a few times throughout today's webinar, but just because consumers may be delaying the actual buying decision, it certainly doesn't mean that they're not online choosing what they want to buy next and who they want to buy it from. So it's important to make sure that your business is there while people are making these decisions. It is important at the moment though, when funds are tight, to be optimizing your budget. So what marketing will give you the best exposure and the best ROI when you're advertising during COVID-19? And optimize your targeting. So are you reaching out to the right people? Is it the same people as it was pre-COVID-19? It may not be, okay? Kids are at home, they're being homeschooled. So mom or dad or both are at home schooling them and probably working from home as well. So the whole dynamic has changed. It's important to understand who this new market is and how you can actually reach them. And really important is learn and adapt. So when you do make a change, measure that result, adapt accordingly, and remember things are changing very fast. So if you used to be in a bit of a rhythm of reviewing your marketing once a month or once every couple of months, it's probably now worth looking at what's happening in the market and how that's affecting your business and your advertising and marketing, maybe even once a week or once every couple of weeks, you know, at worst. So first, as we go through the phases, we're going to have a look at the initial shock period. And thank goodness this phase is really already behind us for most of us. So let's just review this phase quite quickly. Basically, consumers are in shock. People didn't know whether they were going to keep their jobs. They certainly weren't making discretionary purchases. On the flip side, essentials like hand wash and toilet paper are becoming unavailable due to panic buying. I mean, here in Australia, I'm not sure what it was like over there in the US, but here in Australia, we actually had security guards manning the toilet paper aisles in shopping centres because people were getting a little bit unruly and taking more than their fair share of toilet paper. So yeah, that whole consumer experience during this phase certainly was all about confusion, panic, and uncertainty. From a business point of view, businesses were in shock as well. So with consumers not buying, businesses were asking, should we even be advertising? Some businesses were closing, and closures meant it no longer made sense to advertise, of course. And if a business was fortunate enough to be in the game of the essential products, then panic buying meant that there was no need to advertise because the businesses couldn't even hold stock. So, Richard, I think right now at this stage, business shock is a great time for me to get indulged in one of your secret gin and tonic recipes with a dash of grapefruit.
Yeah. So in such situation, it's a normal reaction to retreat and step back and understand what's going on, for sure. We saw many of our customers reducing their spend. Some other paused their campaigns. We observed a drop on the Acquisio book of account, a drop of 15% in March and 20% in April. Honestly, we were expecting worse than that. We find these results some kind encouraging. It's an important note to say that most of our clients are agencies with experienced staff, so we observe more controlled reaction instead of pure panic stopping everything. So in these times, it's usually a good moment to adapt and ensure that our messaging is sensitive to the seriousness of the current situation. So let me give you a bad example of not adapting quickly or fast enough. We saw an ad from KFC that was running their video ads showing people eating with pure joy. Advertising during COVID is definitely not finger linking goods. We need to use appropriate images. Another bad example is we saw local car dealerships still showing ads 2 weeks into social distancing, inviting people to their showroom, showing handshakes and other things. So these days, you need to be show empathy and adapt and take a step back to think how should you adapt your advertising based on the current situation we're in. On the other end, we have a good example to share with you. So an example about DoubleTree by Hilton. Like you know, Hilton is not booking any hotel at the moment. They're staying in touch with some creative advertising, sharing their famous chocolate chip cookies recipe. So for those of you that already tasted their cookie, you know what I'm talking about. They're really good, but we felt, Greg and I, that it was a good inspiration of what local businesses could do to engage with their local community. So if we go back to the first phase, let's move to the next one. Let's move to the lockdown reality. So the lockdown reality is very different depending on where you're located. Different areas are going through different phases. Some states never had a lockdown. So in this section, we will address the reality of those states that are currently in lockdown, and Greg will tell us a bit more about that reality.
Thanks, Richard. Just to let you know that you're not helping me with my COVID-19 weight gain. We're 5-10 minutes into the presentation and we're talking double choc chip, DoubleTree cookies and gin and tonics. It's all getting a little bit out of hand. Just to touch on lockdown reality, and we're going to look at it from the consumers and the local SMBs point of view. So from a consumer's point of view, during lockdown, they're definitely having more of a preference for one-stop shopping and bulk buying. So people don't really want to leave their homes, and when they do, they certainly want to make sure that they're buying up so that they only have to do it, once a week or once a fortnight. A lot of confusion in the market as well. So who's open? Who's not open? Who's delivering? Are you safe to deal with? Do you do contactless pickup? So a lot of confusion around who can I do business with? There's certainly a preference for local and a preference for community and keeping that money and keeping the money within your local and your community to look after the families within your local areas. And with a lot of time spent at home, maybe just not buying right now, but there's certainly a lot of research going on. So with people spending more time at home, on the internet, on social media, they're exposed to a lot of messages and a lot of marketing, and they're certainly doing a lot of research about things that they would like to get involved in, perhaps when there's a little bit less uncertainty. From the local SMBs point of view, it's a little bit different. They're applying for government aid. Things are potentially quite tough. They're trying to work out and balance cash flows, and they're trying to work out how their business and how their offerings actually fit into this new world. So the external influences and the external world has changed, and there's a lot of internal soul searching about how can I fit into that and how can I market into that new normal, if you like. Richard, going to talk about some of the focuses.
Yeah, we made some observation in the lockdown reality. Very interesting in the Google search trends and the search patterns. A lot more people want to know more about COVID, as an example, and there's a huge peak of searches early in the morning and late at night, which was pretty unusual in normal times, but we're not in a normal situation. So you may want to adapt your campaigns day parting or adapt some negative keywords to your campaigns based on what you can find on using Google search trends. We also see many searches on financial aids, coverage, payment method, other searches on essential services and store opening hours. So there's really a need to adapt your online presence with your revised or adapted business hours, expedite shipping, and safety measures that you have in place. Not doing so could leave the impression that you're not really adapting your business to the reality, and it may have a negative perception. We saw growth interest in do-it-yourself, so grooming at home, pet grooming, acrylic nail kit, dog grooming kit, many kits like that were not searched that much before. only like the keyword search containing the word virtual exploded. Like Microsoft published their numbers, like year over year, they have a 25x increase in virtual something, like virtual meeting, virtual cards, virtual Mother's Day. So people spend more time in their kitchen, so they're searching for recipe. They're searching also for delivery services, search for pickup services, and search for divorce law, I'm sure. So it's really a time to adapt your campaign's keywords with words like safe or pickup or delivery, and really adapt your ads with safety measures in place, like contactless payment option. Call us to place your order. You may not have a web, like an e-commerce site, but you can take order by phone. So it's time to adapt your ads accordingly, talking about safe delivery, pickup option, and also make rooms for empathy, because it's not easy what we're currently going through. Now, if we look at some statistics observed from increased media consumption. So what we see is a huge increase in video streaming, up to 85% when we compare year over year. I'm probably one of the big contributor in that, so I was able to go through a few Netflix series, but people are spending a lot more time on video streaming. They also search for things that they were not used to search for, like in-home entertainment, homeschooling app, and looking for news. Like 43% of Americans are consuming more news than before. And if we look at the increase on social media usage, social media are a very good way to stay connected with your family, your friends. So people are spending more time on these networks. There's a 16% increase time spent on social media. And when you look at the number of people on Facebook, it's 2.6 billion, like an increase of 10% over Q2 of last year. So it's a huge pool of people, and for sure you can, there's advertising opportunity to stay in contact with your local community, definitely with that. Greg, I'll let you cover the search advertising part.
Yeah, sure, Richard. So basically, it may seem counterintuitive, but an opportunity has presented itself, and we love opportunities. So if you think about it, many competitors are pausing their campaigns. But at the same time, consumers, everyone's at home in lockdown, online, so more impressions are actually available. So this means a bigger audience, but a smaller cost per click. So it's a great time to build that brand, build a business brand. Plus, don't forget, again, I said it earlier, but just because consumers may put off their actual purchase for a little while doesn't mean they're not online now, choosing what they want to buy and who they want to buy it from. So great time to stay visible and make sure that when they do make that final purchase decision, that decision is with your advertiser or with your business. But it's important to just be really sensitive and mindful. So at this time in lockdown, your marketing wants to circulate around offering help, offering advice. If you're going to have news in your marketing, because there's so much news about COVID-19 at the moment, it's just important to keep it really relevant to your industry or your local area or your local consumers. So that's search advertising. Now let's have a look at programmatic advertising. And now is a great time to utilize marketing technologies to ensure that your ads are seen by the right people at the right time. And this will ensure that you maximize your return on investment. So with ad placements, while in lockdown, people are browsing sites that focus on entertainment, physical exercise, educational type content, and having your ads placed on these sites, of course, is much more relevant at the moment than having them on, sports sites or events, for example. So it's important to think about that. Frequency, with so many more impressions available at the moment than pre-COVID-19, it's important that you monitor the frequency of your ads. So because your budget's going further and there's more people out there online, that you don't want to harass them with your programmatic advertising. You want to remind them and remind them about how great the business is and the benefits of doing business with you, but you just want to make sure that you're not harassing them with a frequency that's set too high. Competition is limited. So with many companies' programs on pause due to supply chain issues and things like that, plus consumers are tending to gravitate towards local businesses as well, it's a great time to do some competitive prospecting and gain some of that additional market share that you had prior to COVID-19. And as far as the actual market goes, Gen Xers and boomers, they're still gravitating towards TV. However, at the moment, they don't really have a choice but to get online and change their behaviors a little bit, because it's how they're actually communicating with their kids and with their grandkids. So although they still have a bit of a preference towards traditional media, they are turning digital and turning more and more digital during COVID-19. And that's a behavior, I guess, that they're going to continue with as we move out of COVID-19 as well. So we've had a look at SEM, we've had a look at programmatic advertising. Now let's have a look at what's happening with social during lockdown. Now with social, it's a very similar story to what's happening in SEM and display. It's really the best of both worlds. So more consumers viewing and clicking, but the cost per impression and click in many cases has dropped. In fact, Facebook ad impressions have seen a 35 to 50% drop in cost. So again, a great time to use social media to brand and get people used to your business and used to your offerings, so that when the time comes for that next purchase, you're top of mind. So great time to get your message out there, but keep it real and relatable. Focus on advice, assistance, news, but again, only if it's local and relevant to your industry or your consumers. So now it's time to have a look at how businesses can capitalize on this huge change in consumer behavior. And to do that, we're going to have a look at the 5 steps to success and see how they actually apply in a real life scenario with an actual business. And in this case, we're going to look at a pest controller. And this is actually a business from Australia, but it would apply to any pest controller anywhere around the world, really, and really apply to a lot of other types of businesses as well, if you just take the ideas and apply them to the individual circumstances of a business. So this pest controller saw a need within the market, and through his own internal networks, he knew a pest controller with a business in China and Singapore. Now, of course, China and Singapore were a little bit ahead of the curve with COVID-19. So over there, they started doing a service which was called disinfectant fogging. Now, this is where they would go into a business premise, they would fog the whole area, and basically that would disinfect and make the area safe from not only COVID-19, but all viruses actually. So completely kill off the area, and then until another person comes in that was perhaps infected at a later point in time, it would stay disinfected until that time. So great for businesses looking after the health of perhaps people who were working from home and they're returning back to work, or healthcare services and all that sort of thing. So that's really understanding your business and how people are looking for you. And it's great to have that service, but how do you actually reach clients who need that service? So this is all about number 2 and having a strong digital presence. So with this client, first we helped him set up a specific landing page for this new product that he was going to take to market. And if you think about your clients and their businesses, there's probably a change in the type of services that they are offering during COVID-19, and there's certainly likely to be opportunities for things that they may not have done pre-COVID-19. So in this case, we created that landing page for the disinfectant fogging services. Then we created a search campaign specifically for office, business, and home disinfecting for COVID-19. And that was to service clients who knew that they wanted to get their area disinfected, and they were making those searches on Google. And we need to make sure that this business was front and center when these consumers who were absolutely looking for the service were searching and ready to buy. But then we also created a programmatic and social campaign to reach the consumers who didn't even know that this type of service existed. So again, a lot of confusion in the market. This is very new, COVID-19, so people didn't know that you could basically, fog and disinfectant fog your business presence to kill off all viruses, including COVID-19. So we needed to create an awareness campaign to make sure that businesses and business owners and even consumers with their houses knew that this service existed. So number 3 was all about optimizing your budget. And in his case, it went crazy, right? So we had to allocate the COVID disinfecting group its own SEM budget, because as soon as we started creating ad groups for the disinfectant fogging, it just used up a huge portion of his normal pest control budget, and he wasn't able to reach out to those regular type of customers he would get for his pest control. So it was important to optimize that and make sure we reacted to it. And we also noticed through analyzing his reporting, and this is all about optimizing targeting now, so step 4, we also noticed that it was the businesses that wouldn't normally use a pest controller that were contacting him for this disinfectant fogging. So a new audience had actually been created and discovered, and potentially he was able to then cross-sell off the back of that to his normal pest control services, which would be an advantage for him after COVID-19, after we came out the other side of it. And then learning and adapting is really important as well. So we met fortnightly to learn and adapt from the campaign. And in fact, just recently, we switched the awareness campaigns from COVID-19 fogging back to mice and rat control, because in Australia here, we're moving out of the warmer months into the cooler ones. And that's a real time where the rat and mice and rodent control is a really important thing. Plus the fogging searches had dipped a little bit because we were sort of over that peak. So we needed to learn, adapt, change the program, and make sure that we were set up for what was right for his business, at that point in time. So that's the 5 steps to success. Great little example. And Richard, now it's back to you to have a look at what the next phase is after lockdown.
Yeah, so Greg, very interesting example of a business that adapted quickly. Mixed with how the technology supported the business, it's a client that was able to capture and really maximize the opportunity. So a really good one. So we will cover another similar case later on, but for now, let's go through the COVID phases again, and let's go to the next one, which is the progressive reemergence. So in progressive reemergence, with a specific focus on local businesses, to see what business owners are really going through. So to go back at the map, the United States map, we see that looking again, there's currently states in that mode. What does it mean for local businesses? Greg will discuss furthermore about what to consider in progressive reemergence.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So reemergence from lockdown, this is what everyone wants, this is what everyone's hoping for. And this is where governments start releasing initial plans to lift that social distancing. And right now, no one's really sure what that new normal will look like. So if cases rise, we can expect a return to quarantine. In fact, some experts predict this phase of intermittent social distancing could last months, and then there's others out there that are saying it potentially could last years. So it's critical during reemergence that businesses can capture consumers based on habits they develop during lockdown by increasing their online presence and focusing on these new consumer preferences of local, community, different ways of purchasing, like contactless buying, things like that. So it's really important to be close to what the news is in your local area. Okay, so we read a lot of news that's national news and big numbers and rates of infection and all this sort of stuff. But I think for local businesses, it's really important to pull that back into your local area where regulations and restrictions can be very different to what's happening in the rest of the country. And it's important to understand those really clearly so that you can react your business to make sure that it's correct for your local environment. And many components of how business can operate during reemergence are outside of their control. And we always hear, focus on what you can control. And this is a great example. So most governments are putting restrictions on which businesses can reopen and rules on actually how they can operate. And an example of this in Australia is personal trainers. So personal trainers who, you see them in parks that have groups of 15, 20 people, and they'd be personal training a group. Well, as we went into the lockdown phase, in some states that was allowed to still operate, but it was on a one-on-one basis. So you could only be personal training with one person and of course, practicing social distancing just between the two of you. But then as we've come now into re-emergence, that's been relaxed in some states again, so not everywhere, but to groups of 10. Okay, so again, it's really important to understand what's going on in your state and marketing accordingly. In Texas, another example is where they have a 25% occupancy capacity for venues. So in areas where there's interactive activity, like children's play areas or in libraries and interactive exhibits, they must be cordoned off altogether. And again, that rule is probably different in all the different states around America. So again, think about what's happening in that local area, that local community. And again, once you've thought about what is happening in your local area, what you can do internally to control the situation and react to the situation. Not worry too much about what's outside of your control, because you really have very, very little impact over that. So Richard, what new habits have consumers picked up as they actually start to reemerge?
Yeah, consumers are definitely more cautious. According to a survey by Engine Group, we see that 66% of consumers feels the need to avoid crowds. But at the same time, we're all missing going to restaurant. When we look at the numbers, 85% of us miss to go to restaurant. When we look at people that are missing shopping for non-essential products, it's 81%. So we're all missing doing things the normal way. But when we clearly see what emerge brings to a boost in consumer shopping locally, with a boost also in the e-commerce adoption. So there are definitely opportunities to capture here for those that can adapt. On that front, Greg will tell us a bit more about relaunching campaigns.
Yeah, so look, if that's what's going on with the consumer, for businesses, if they haven't already, now is a great time to start relaunching their marketing campaigns. So consumers have a pent up, they're bored, they're ready for some form of normality, okay, but they are going to be a little bit hesitant about moving to that state. So remember, consumers may have delayed that purchase, but they are still out there researching. So make it easy for them. Give them reassurances about dealing with you and that it's safe to deal with you. Be clear about when you're open, your operating hours, and the different ways and different options that are available to transact with your business. Again, they're confused, so you need to be really clear, perhaps clearer than normal, about the ways of doing business with you and when you're open and all the different ways that it's safe to deal with your business. Many businesses will now be restarting their marketing, so competition is going to be pretty fierce. It's a great idea to have retargeting as part of your campaign, so that if a customer or a consumer does land on your website, you can follow them around the web and around social media, reminding them of your message so that when they are ready to buy, it's you they come back to. And in fact, starting those sort of campaigns back in the lockdown, where a lot of us are still in that period now, is a good idea, because that's where you can capture them through some creative marketing, like the DoubleTree cookie example, but then stay in front of them and stay top of mind for when that same consumer who just wanted to bake a DoubleTree cookie is ready to actually book a hotel room as we move into a situation where we can actually do that again. And use hyper-targeted advertising to make sure that any advertising budget that's being spent is spent on relevant audiences. In fact, Richard, can you take us through that aspect in a little bit more detail?
Yes, it's really time to fine-tune your campaigns. And when we look at search specifically, use Google Trends to discover new keywords that are being currently searched by people. You'll find and discover keywords that you were not thinking about before. So this is a great tool. Fine-tune your campaigns, also geo-target setting, to make sure that you precisely target people that are in your local area. Adapt your ads also to the way your business is adapting to COVID. Like, spread the word, say your business is open and how it is open. If you want to take the value of your ad, spend furthermore, you can consider using advanced programmatic advertising. You can use past location data. It's also referred as addressable geofencing. So for those of you that are not like knowledgeable about that, a geofence is a virtual perimeter that represents a real-world geographic area. So it can be dynamically generated as like a radius around a point location, or it can also be a predefined set boundaries. And what's really interesting about that is you can target consumer that already visited your store pre-COVID. You can also target people that visited a specific places like a competitor or maybe a superstore that is close by. So you see, you can really leverage this technology easily to reach people even when they're at home, spending more time in front of their screens. So it's really those type of opportunities that we see that you could leverage when you think of restarting your campaigns. Now, what about e-commerce? Greg, can you cover that part?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I think what you were just talking about then is really important. You know, take advantage of the technologies that are available through companies like Yellow and Acquisio, because they do mean that you can target the right advertisers, the right people in the right place at the right time, and make that advertising budget go as far as possible, you know, during these times when everybody is watching their budgets and watching their money. Now, e-commerce. This might be the time to have a look at e-commerce if your business hasn't already done so, or if it's the type of thing that is going to work for your type of business, your type of industry. So even during re-emergence, consumers will still be cautious, and they'll certainly still have a preference or a habit that they built up during COVID-19 for online shopping. So that habit that they did build up over that time actually meant that online shopping over this period has been up by 74%. So that's going to be a habit for some people that's hard to break. There is some good news for businesses who want to dabble in this and don't already. And Google is actually rolling out free Google listings by the end of the month. So if it hasn't already been rolled out in your area, it will certainly be rolled out very, very soon. You can jump on Google and Google that and find all the information out about it. But it sounds great. I mean, part of that process, they're even going to improve the onboarding process, and they've got some new partnerships with companies like PayPal. So they're trying to make the whole process a little bit easier than perhaps it was in the past. Of course, to get shopping listings that are up the top, it's Google like normal. You know, you're not going to need to pay to get those priority listings. But I think just for businesses that haven't tried this before, it's a great little opportunity to try something new and try Google Shopping as a way of getting your individual products up there in a Google search result. For businesses outside of America, I was reading that it looks like this is going to be rolled out by the end of the year. So, but for American businesses and agencies, it should already be happening now and be complete by the end of the month. So let's now have a look at how local businesses currently have a real opportunity to challenge larger businesses. And we've actually got a good little example to demonstrate this. So this is a local coffee shop in Montreal in Quebec, and they're now selling their beans via e-commerce. So Dispatch Coffee is the business, and consumers may have in the past bought online from big corporates like Nespresso. And the reason is that companies like Nespresso, because they had the budgets and they were early adopters with digital marketing, those sort of businesses were the first ones to get online and start selling their services, coffee and pods and things like that online. And it's only later that companies like Dispatch Coffee have jumped on board and started trying to sell their beans online as well. But with the consumers now having a preference, really because of what's been happening during COVID-19, for local shopping, for dealing with their local community, for keeping the money, you know, local within their area, it does open up an opportunity for businesses like that to sell online and steal some of that market share back from the larger organizations. Another great little example here is wine. So if you think a lot of people, traditionally the habit is buying wine online from perhaps Costco or wine.com. Well, now local wineries or little boutique alcohol suppliers with a niche local community feel can sell their product online and take advantage really of that new consumer behavior and preference to shop local and shop with their local community. So Richard, understanding the market and being able to adapt is key, and you've got a little bit more about that.
Exactly. We've discussed earlier about how adaptability is very important. Greg talked about the pest control business that really adapted themselves quickly. I want to give you an example on how technology can assist when the market conditions are changing rapidly and drastically, like we're currently in. One example of that technology is automated bidding. They usually use some learning techniques to discover new patterns and adjust on your behalf. Leveraging automated bidding like Acquisio Turing for local businesses is a good example. You can rely on a system like that to take the best bidding decision for you. And a few years ago, it reminded me that we printed some t-shirts where we were saying, "I'm not a robot." And the real meaning behind those t-shirts was really to tell our prospect and customer, let the machine do what the machines are better at, and invest your time adapting in the current context, adapting your keywords, your ads, your landing pages instead, where human creativity really stand out over. So let me share a good case study with you that demonstrate how learning algorithm can really optimize your situation. And this example is based on a car dealership that is managing 57 different dealer locations in the United States. They've activated the optimization, the Acquisio Turing optimization on March 14, right at the center of the crisis. So there were, of course, less advertisers in the auction, more impressions available, more clicks for a given budget, which led to more conversions. So the system automatically detected those opportunities and distributed the budget also across search engines account and across campaigns. And when we see that type of result, when you look at the red section is really when the optimization engine was activated, turned on. And what you see on the upper part of the graph is the number of clicks. The darker line is number of clicks, and the second line is the average cost per click that we were able to generate. And the graph below shows the number of conversions and the cost per conversions. So you see, it's very difficult for a human to go and adapt to changing drastic changes. But when you rely on technologies that goes multiple times a day in the auction to take those decisions, that's really where you can really leverage learning technologies to your benefit and to your customers' benefit. So you see, we were very happy to see that our algos were delivering such good results in such difficult time. I was going to say that this is one of the reasons why we're coming at the office each morning, but instead in our current situation, I should say this is the reason why we have Zoom meetings each morning. But really, it's great result, and this is the type of things that thrive us here at Acquisio. Now I'll let Greg explain the steps to success to apply.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. That is an awesome example. Look, I don't know what the car industry is like in the US at the moment, but in Australia, it is tough at the moment. So the industry is finding it really, really tough to sell cars during COVID-19. So to see a technology that's actually on the same budget driven clicks up by driving the cost per click down is actually quite phenomenal. And that's the importance of getting the most out of your budget when times are a little bit tighter and a little bit tougher than normal. And we've got another great example here. And again, this is a local one down in Australia that I've got a little bit of exposure to. And I'm going to take you through the 5 steps again and how Yellow was able to work with this customer on their business by applying these 5 steps to success. So this is a plastic fabrication business, And basically, due to their detailed reporting from Acquisio and their relationship with Yellow, we were able to notice a huge spike in keyword traffic activity for sneeze guards. Now, under a traditional way of operating with AdWords, this may not have been noticed under your normal restrictions, but Acquisio is jumping on the increased activity, and because sneeze guards and people having an urgent desire to convert those and get them installed in their business, the conversion was up in them as well. So we noticed 10 times the normal search volume for sneeze guards. Okay, so it was pretty massive. Not only sneeze guards, but keywords that are related to that type of search. So seeing that happen, we then created a dedicated landing page on their website for Perspex screens and sneeze guards, which wasn't already there, because if you think about it, pre-COVID-19, sneeze guards was like, wouldn't have even been 1% of this business's product that they sell, right? So it was effectively a fairly new sort of thing. So we created that landing page and then created a new ad group and ads for these searches. So with so many searches now with that ad group, it was important to customize the message and make sure that we were optimizing the conversions from those clicks through to the customer's website and through to their new landing page. As far as optimizing the budget went, that shift in ad spend to keywords that were converting well meant that a lot of the budget was getting used up for things to do with sneeze guards and protective Perspex screens and things like that. In fact, over half the budget was actually getting spent on this, I guess, new service that this business was taking advantage of during COVID-19. So we had to increase the overall budget to make sure that we weren't cannibalizing searches that were happening in his normal part of the business, and that the sneeze guard business was all incremental on top of what he was already getting. That was really important. And then it's important to then optimize that target. So different types of businesses were now dealing with him. So new demographics, inquiries from business that post-19 wouldn't even be dealing with a plastic fabricator. So businesses like taxis and Ubers and small retail shops and even McDonald's, he is putting these protective screens up for. And then it's critical also to learn and adapt, because monitoring that performance regularly to glean the intelligence on changes in what consumers are looking for. So that's important here, as I'm sure it is in America, because of the difference amongst states. So some markets are still coming into lockdown, some are in the middle of lockdown, some are coming out of lockdown. The social distancing rules are different, across every state. So understanding that and where the inquiries are coming from and where the conversions are coming from is really important to make sure that we're moving his budget around to the areas that we're going to get him the best return on investment. So a great little example of a business who was able to find an opportunity and capitalize on it in some really tough times by applying those 5 steps to success, and working with a business like Yellow and a technology like Acquisio that is able to discover and find those opportunities that perhaps wouldn't have been found otherwise, was critical to this business being able to find success in that difficult time. So Richard, when are we getting back to normal?
Oh boy, so let's see what the future reserves. So what we call the new normal. So of course we cannot wait for the new normal to happen, and we need to adapt. We cannot wait. Like, we really need to adapt our local advertising, and starting to adapt your strategy in the current re-emergence phase will help us to adapt, measure, learn, improve, rinse and repeat, because we need, the more iteration we can go through, the more we learn, the more we improve. And that's really what's happening here with a few, most of our customers. That's what we see happening. It's unclear what the future will be, but what's clear is what you can measure right now. And for this reason, consumers are developing new habits that will stay. So we're discovering those new habits as we run campaigns and get results. So it's really hard to say when things will totally go back to normal. But in the meantime, let's adjust our strategy.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So yeah, the new normal for business. The competitive landscape has shifted. So competition does look different. A little example, 31% of Canadian small businesses think they could close for good. So the competition is going to be more digital than ever. Businesses with a strong digital presence are more likely to make it through. And previous dominant competitors may lose market share. So 61% of consumers are purchasing from brands they wouldn't typically, because of not only supply issues, but also because of those changing consumer preferences of wanting to deal local and wanting to keep their money and keep their trade within that local community. So your competitors are changing, or the businesses that you look after, their competitors are changing. They're not the same. There may be less competition, and it's an opportunity. And in order to grab that opportunity, you need to be out looking for that opportunity, and you need to be present and visible. So the business market has shifted, but so have the consumers. So what does the new normal for consumers look like? And people are trying to buy local rather than buying from overseas providers. They're trying to support businesses in their local community, trying to look after each other. They'd rather get takeaway from the local pasta shop, than from McDonald's, and that is a changing behaviour. In fact, people are busting to get out of their homes and go and have a meal in their in a restaurant with their wife and their friends. So there's absolutely a need for consumers and a groundswell for them to start getting back to normal as quick as they can. They're trying to look after each other by shopping local and supporting their local communities and local restaurants and businesses where that money is going to stay local. And as a local business, it's important to appeal to these local community preferences when you're doing any marketing and advertising, and make sure that your messages are in sync with those new consumer behaviours. So Richard, we now want to buy more local than ever. Is there anything else us consumers are doing a little differently?
Yeah, in fact, we see the existing trends of digital transformation in all aspects of running a business is definitely being accelerated, as we can see. We got the shock treatment, and now is the opportunity to adapt and to stay competitive. Consumers were really forced by COVID to adapt online research more and purchasing online. And more than ever, they will expect technology enhanced consumer offering and seamless interaction. So really, to me, that's the new normal.
Okay, so look, in conclusion, you need to pave the groundwork now. So the truth is, if you wait until the new normal to improve your digital offering, it's probably going to be too late. And one of the things I have said a number of times through today's webinar is, just because consumers may be holding off that purchase decision a little bit, it doesn't mean they're not online right now choosing what they want to buy and who they want to buy it from. So it's a great time to pivot towards a new business model right now in preparation for the new normal consumer. So that's it from myself and Richard today, and I thank everybody for joining us. And I'm going to throw back to Lizzie now, just to move on to the next stage.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard and Greg, for the wonderful presentation. We have time for just a couple of questions, so I'll go ahead and grab two of them. So the first one I have is, what are the advertising strategies you recommend for a business with a very low ad budget?
Yeah, that's a very good, relevant one. Greg, I'm sure you'll be able to complement, but what I would do is really focus on keywords that best describe how you're adapting your business to the COVID situation. Adapting your ads, adapting your website is key. I saw many websites that it was not clear if they were still open, their business hours were, it seemed like it was the same as before. So I think that's an important area. For small budget, it's probably the first thing you want to do. Update at least your web presence to your new business hours and your new reality. Adapt your departing, we saw some interesting trend. Look at your high conversion keyword. I think on search, that's pretty much what I would focus on. You can also explore some interesting programmatic approach which are not that expensive. They're they're perceived expensive, but they're not that expensive. Like the geofencing one is a good example. With like a decent budget, you can start doing geofencing around your location or some other specific area. So I invite you to look at these options when you're on very low budget. Greg,
Yeah, I think that's.
yeah,
No, I was going to say, Richard, I think that's some great advice. You do need to make sure that your website is current and up to date and has all the correct information, because you want to make sure that any money you spend on marketing, you have the best chance of converting that into a customer. So you need to make sure your website's set up for conversion. But also, if you've got some money to spend on marketing, look, I agree. I think SEM is the way to go. And just to explain why, it's going to have the highest conversion to customers. So if you think of the path to purchase, you can make a customer aware of a need, okay, through awareness advertising and get them excited about something new. Then they're going to move into that research phase and think about your own personal behavior. When you research, you tend to be probably using the organic results in a Google search because you're just researching, looking for information. But as you move to that buying phase, and I now know what I want, I just want to work out who I'm going to buy it from, you start looking for who sells that product within your local area, right? And at that point, you may start gravitating towards the search engine marketing ads up the top, because you're not researching anymore. You're just looking for the business that's you're going to be able to deal with to buy that product that you're looking for. So you're right at the pointy end. I've got the money in my wallet. I'm ready to make the purchase. I'm going to look at those ads, so they're going to have a high conversion rate. So I would certainly take advantage of that particular vertical when your advertising budget is a little bit limited.
Yeah, you can also leverage some prospective programmatic campaigns. Again, there's a perception that you need a big budget for those campaigns, but it's really not the case. When you look at the audience targeting, you specifically target some regions. For the interest, you can repurpose your keyword list from your search campaigns as interest for interest targeting. And we have more and more customers diversifying their approach. They do search for like more direct response, but for awareness, they explore new programmatic advertising, and it's slowly growing, and we got some good results from many small businesses.
That's great. Thank you both for that. So the next question I have is, what do you recommend for businesses whose normal target audience are international tourists or travelers?
Richard, I'll let you take that one if you like.
Okay. I think we went through a good example today. With the Hilton example, where they share their chocolate chip cookie recipe with their customers or prospect, or just to keep engaged. I think that could be a very good example on how can you keep your audience engaged with your brand, even if no one is really looking to travel right now. At some point, it will change. So I think there's an opportunity to stay in the mindset of people and be there when they're ready to activate these type of activities again.
Yeah, even capture that audience that have come to your website for the chocolate chip cookies, and then remarket to them with an offer once the business can reopen again. It's a great strategy.
Yeah.
Totally. All right, and the last one, I know we're a little bit over time, but the last one I have is, how can local marketers explain the value of spending on advertising when a local business owner is very financially stressed and already having trouble making ends meet?
Yeah, great question, and we have this conversation a lot with our customers here in Australia through Yellow. So I like to take that one back to a bit of an analogy. Okay, so if the business has made the decision that they want to trade through COVID-19, and that's what they're trying to do, turning the tap off that supplies the customers to their business isn't going to help their situation of being financially stressed. It's obviously going to make that situation worse because you're turning off the one thing that is actually driving revenue into the business. Even if it is slower at the moment, it is still the tap that's supplying revenue into your business. So perhaps a better strategy, or at least an alternate strategy, and one that we're working with our customers here is, you know, as an agency, a digital agency, how can we help that customer maybe keep their spend the same or reduce it a little bit, but actually try to turn the tap on more, right? So we've got all sorts of strategies where we're actually trying to give customers either more advertising or redirect their advertising or refocus their advertising or be more targeted with the advertising to get more customers come into their business, because that's what's actually going to help them be less financially stressed, not turning off the customer tap altogether.
And I have a good quote on that. Like we say, an image is worth 1,000 words. I think this quote worth 1,000 words as well. It's a quote from Henry Ford that you probably already heard or saw previously. Henry Ford said that stopping advertising to save money is like stopping your watch to save time. So it cannot disappear totally. It would harm your business probably more. You need to be smart about your advertising dollars, and it's time to position yourself with the new reality. So I think I like the Henry Ford quote because to me it's revealing the mindset that we should all think. It will be back to normal at some point, or a new normal, and there's always opportunities in any crisis. And it's to see how should we adapt to the current time. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, Richard and Greg, so much. These are great questions and discussion, and thanks so much again to Acquisio for putting together the webinar for us. Just a few more items from Locology before we end today's webinar. You will be able to view today's broadcast along with previous webinars on our website, locology.com. Just navigate to Research and Resources and click Webinars. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to visit locology.com and subscribe for updates to be the first to know about future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.